right? Every Friday we will have one session which will be a recap of the first 4 days what we have covered. Right? So that would be the approach going forward, right? And I'll clearly mention that this is the question that I will be asking it, and on Friday I'll ask each and every person the same question. So you'll have to respond to that and take it up as an interview question and explain it, right? So you'll clearly get the questions as well when I talk about throughout the week. I'll tell you that this is a question I'm going to ask, and then you need to be prepared for that, right? Just to make sure that you're practicing on your articulation as well, and you're clear with the concept. Okay, so everybody has to answer all those set of questions that will be coming out for that particular week. Okay, I hope that's clear with all of you guys. Yeah, so Manju, today's session also I'll focus on the questions, right? Broadly, I'll focus on this one topic, which is the requirement elicitation. How do we understand the requirements, right?
Okay.
Now, I'll ask the same question. I'll want every one of you to respond to that. Okay. So let's do this because this is important. So it's not just learning something, but finally we'll have to convert the interviews and get a job. Right. So focusing on this, I'll ask questions on the basic stuff. It's very preliminary and very fundamental questions I'll be asking today, and I want each one of you to respond to that. Okay. Let me. Right. I'll just list down the questions here so that everybody can see, and then each one of you can start picking up from there and then explain that. Yeah, so we'll focus on these 5 questions. I think these are the most important ones, right? I hope everybody can see these questions. Okay, right. So one after the other, start picking up the question and then respond to those 5 questions here. Right? So these are the most important questions, whatever has been covered till now, right? I want each one of you to pick up these questions, the basic questions at least, and then answer to this. Okay. I'll add one more. Let's add prototyping as well. So Akhil, let's start with you. So just pick up each question and then give your response.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
SOW is the statement of work which generally defines what the project-specific activities are, what the deliverables would be, and what the timelines are supposed to be. It's generally supposed to be a high-level document which states the objective of the particular project.
Wonderful, good. Next question.
BRD is a business requirement document which states all the requirements specific to that project, and these are generally functional requirements. And it's a high-level document that suggests all the requirements that are needed for the particular project.
Yeah, a couple of suggestions. It's a detailed document, won't be the high-level document.
Okay.
Right. So the detailed business requirements are there. SOW just lists down the features of the scope. Right. The detailed requirements are covered in your BRD. Right?
Yep.
The second point is you just said that it covers only the functional. It also covers the non-functional requirements. All that is covered as part of the BRD. Okay. Functional as well as non-functional. I'll explain what are the non-functional requirements later. But when you're talking about BRD, it captures both your functional as well as non-functional requirements.
Okay. Yeah. And the next one is what is JAD? JAD session. What I've understood, it's basically JAD. It's a session between different departments that are involved in the particular project, and the requirements are discussed. And if there's any discrepancy between the developers or the architect, those are solved through the JAD session. The business analyst generally holds the JAD session and moderates the JAD session, and eventually ends up with what the perfect requirements are for the product to go forward with.
All right. So explain the acronym also when you respond to that, so that people understand it. So when somebody says JAD, so it's a joint application.
It's a joint application design. Yeah.
And the second thing is we are bringing in the various participants to make the decision making faster.
Okay.
So see, a lot of times what happens is the customer gives the requirement, then we capture the detailed requirement, then the technical guy might say, what, this is not feasible, right? So in that case, what we do? You'll go back to the customer and then say, no, this is not feasible. Tell me the different way, right? So to avoid all this, what you do is you have all these various stakeholders. You have the customer, you have the architects, you have the testers. Everybody would be there in the same room, right? And you pick up the requirement. The customer tells, the architect says, what are the alternatives possible for that, and then the customer picks up the best one. So all those happen as part of the JAT session.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, you can explain it like this. You don't need to have a formal definition, and try to explain how you would conduct a JAT session, right?
So
So
I'm not
don't,
sure about
yeah.
that, how to conduct a JAT session.
All right. So I'll explain that later, but, let me take that as a topic which I should cover again. Okay. So maybe we could even have a small mock JAT session,
Mhm.
right? So that we understand it better.
Okay.
All right. Go on to the next question.
Prototyping is type of a requirement elicitation, which generally means that there's a representation of an example. It's a prototype of the project, how it's going to look, and it could be a simple drawing or a working prototype, which allows the customer to understand how the application is going to look like or function at, and it gives an understanding of how the end project is going to be.
So basically, it's a technique to validate your understanding with the customer, right?
Okay.
So we are making sure that the customer, we as a business analyst and the technical team, everybody understands the requirement in the same way. And how do we do that? We use a prototype is nothing but a simulation of your final product. Right? It basically behaves the same way as your final product would behave. Right? Maybe it will not have the complete comprehensive functionality what your final product would have. Right? But it more or less simulates that experience and then says that this is how your final product would look like. Okay. So why do we do that? So that there is no disconnect when you're finally delivering the product. Everybody knows that this is exactly what the final product would look like. Okay. So to gain that common understanding, we create prototypes. Okay. And say it's more of a validation of the requirements with the customer, saying that this is how your final product is going to be like. That you would create prototypes. Again, then you can go about and then say, prototypes are classified into throwaway and then your evolutionary prototypes. Throwaway are the basic ones where we create the sketches, and evolutionary are the more advanced where we create using HTML with the help of a developer and all. Right? So you can get into the details about that. Okay, so that would be a better approach too. Yeah, go ahead. Next, traceability.
Traceability was, I think it was a matrix which generally states how the project timelines are going to be and the dependability of each product, each requirement based on another requirement. So, for example, if one project is depending upon the other project and when it finishes up.
Let me answer that. I think then it will become clear. See, basically, when you have when you want to ensure that all your requirements are finally delivered, right? So you need to track them through the various phases so that it's converted to the next phase. It's transition to the next phase. For example, a typical project would consist of requirements, design, development, testing, and then final implementation. Right? Now, there's a good chance that requirements could slip during any one of these phases. Right? Traceability ensures that we are mapping them to the previous deliverables so that these slippages are avoided, right? So right from the requirement, we ensure that right from the SOW, we ensure that it's converted into a requirement. That requirement is converted into a design document. That design document is converted into an actual program, and finally, it's tested out. So if you do this for each and every requirement, we can be pretty much sure that if you have committed for some 100 requirements, all our 100 requirements are finally translated into your final working system, right? So this process of tracking the requirements right from the start of the project till the end of the project to make sure that we are delivering all of them, and also uh, linking them is called as traceability. Okay. Now broadly there are two types of traceability. One is vertical traceability, which tracks through the multiple phases of the project, like linking a requirement to a design document to a program. So this is called as vertical traceability. The second one is you are linking the requirements to one another. If one requirement is dependent on the other requirement, you are linking that, and this is called as horizontal traceability. Now, why do we need this? Because at a later point, if something changes, if one of the requirement changes, right, so you can figure out what is the impact of that change onto the other requirements. So if you have the horizontal traceability covered, you can easily figure out, if I make this change, these are the other modules which are impacted. Okay, so
Okay.
so this is a way of managing the scope and ensuring that whatever you have committed, you are delivering, and also ensuring you can easily identify the impact of any changes on the rest of the application.
Raju, you are saying that this thing, uh, vertical traceability means like one-to-one relationship, and horizontal means one-to-many.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, horizontal traceability is one-to-many, right? And vertical traceability could be one-to-many as well, because one requirement could translate into multiple design documents, or one design document could be linked to multiple requirements as well, right?
So I didn't get the difference then.
Okay, let me explain that here. So let's say you have requirement 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Now, if requirement 1 changes, it could have an impact on 2 as well, which means 2 is dependent on 1. If requirement 1 changes and then that impacts requirement 2, this is called as horizontal traceability. We are linking them. So we are saying that 2 is dependent on 1. So in horizontal traceability, I'm maintaining that relationship. Okay. So 2 is dependent on 1. Right. So I know that if requirement 1 changes, then I have to check the requirement 2 also, because 2 is dependent on 1. If 1 changes, so 2 also will change. Right. So this is called as horizontal traceability. Right. Similarly, 3 also could be dependent on 1. If 1 changes, 3 also could change. Right. So all this is covered in your horizontal traceability. Now, there is a requirement 1. Okay. Now, what are the phases of the project? You would first do the requirements, you do the design, you do the coding, right? You do the unit testing, you do the UAT or testing, right? And finally implement it. Right? So broadly, these are the phases of the project. Okay. So each requirement, you're tracking them. So requirement 1 is there, right? And then that is linked to the design document, right? Design document of 1, right? And then which is in turn linked to the program which is implementing that requirement. Then the unit test cases which are testing that one. Then the test cases which are linking the functional test cases, right? And finally the implemented software, right? So it's all requirement 1 which is tracked, but you're linking the deliverables from each phase so that you can clearly understand that this requirement what I have is being translated into the various other phases, right? So since it goes through each phase, we call this as a vertical traceability, right? So you have your requirements, then your design, coding, unit testing, and then implementation. So since you're tracking them, we call this as a vertical traceability. And since there are requirements 1 to 3, and then you are linking them with one another, we call that as horizontal traceability. Okay. I hope that clarifies your question.
Raju sir, could you tell vertical tracing again?
Now, say, you're working on a large project. There are some 1000 requirements in it. Okay. Now, you have completed your BRD. You have written your BRD. Now, how do you ensure that all your 1000 requirements are covered in this BRD? Very simple. We'll look at your SOW and then say SOW we had 1000 requirements. So correspondingly, did we cover all that into our use cases in our BRD is what we will check, right? Makes sense, right? So we are checking. We'll pick up the SOW. There are 1000 requirements in it. We'll check. Okay, first requirement, is it complete? If yes, then you'll put in a tick mark and then move ahead. Okay. So this you would you do it for for the requirement side, right? Now, if you understand the reason why we are doing it, then it makes sense, right? So you don't want to miss out of any of those 1000 requirements. So you're making sure that it's transferred into requirements. Okay. Then what you do? Then you pick up the next phase, which is design documents. Now, when somebody is preparing the design documents, he also has to make sure that 1000 requirements what are captured in the BRD is translated into the design documents. So what he will do, he will prepare a checklist. Okay, these design documents will link to this particular requirement and captures that. Okay. So similarly, when you write the programs also, this program would meet requirement 1, 2, 3 or 4, 5, 6, whatever it is. So you'll do that one-to-one linking. So effectively what we are doing is, if there are 1000 requirements, right, so we are ensuring that all those 1000 are translated into your finance system, right? So that is traceability. Okay. So you're linking, so each and every phase has a deliverable. There is a BRD here, right? There is a design document here. Then there are executables here, the programs actually, right? And then you have test cases written here, right? And then finally you have the executables again. Right? So let's call this as the programs, right? So programs should be written, and finally the executables. So 1000 requirements are part of your BRD, 1000 requirements are part of your design documents, 1000 requirements are part of your programs, part of your testing, and finally your executables. That is what you're trying to check in your traceability, right? So you link this 1000 requirements to your BRD. From BRD, you would link it to your design documents. From there, you would link it to the programs, and then make sure that they are tested and finally implemented in your production environment, right? So each step you are making a checklist and then checking whether it consists of those 1000 or did we miss some of the requirements. Okay. So it ensures that all your requirements are finally delivered. So you have not missed out on any of the requirements. Okay. So see the word trace, what does it mean? You're tracing your requirements right from the start till the end. They're delivered. So once you deliver the system, they should actually have those 1000 requirements delivered in it. Okay. So next question, the change management. So anyway, I'll ensure that I'll cover these two topics again. I think you guys are a little more, you need a little more clarity on those two. Yeah, change management. Akhil, go ahead.
Change management is when a customer asks for a change and the business analyst, they're asked to fill a formal written form, which is basically called the change request form. After this, we are supposed to analyze the impact of the change on the basis of how much it's going to cost and what's the effect on the timeline of the project. And once we figure out what the impact is and do an analysis of that, we send it to the senior management, which generally is the change authorization board, and they are supposed to either approve it or decline it.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Angela, go ahead with the questions.
No questions.
No, I would want you to answer each of these six questions, right? So think that you're part of an interview. These are the six questions which I'm asking. So I want each one of you to respond to these questions. I just want you to understand whether you're following the topics or not. Okay. So pick up each question and then start answering them. So what is an SOW?
I'm not fully prepared for answering all this now.
Okay. But give it a try. I just wanted to see how, or rather, maybe at the end of the session you can do that. I'll let you
Oh, okay.
speak after the rest of the team. Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, Avi, go ahead, please. Avi?
I think I
Can you hear me?
answered few of these in the last session, but still I'll try. So
Yeah.
I would start with prototyping. So
Start for
I
the
would.
question. Let's go.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes. What
We
did you say?
start with the first question, SOW, BRD, and then after that. Mohsin, you have something to say? Can I
want me
request you to be on mute?
start or is Angela speaking now?
Let's go one by one. Let Avi complete, and then I'll come over to you. Thank you.
I'll go next. Whoever is ready maybe can speak.
No, let's go one by one. I want see this is a clear mandate from your
Oh,
coordinator
okay.
that everybody answers these questions, right? So we'll have to follow this process. So please go ahead. Questions. No, that's okay. I think whatever you understand, you can explain. I'll help you out with it. If you don't answer properly, also that's perfectly okay. But give it an attempt. Go ahead.
So SOW is a statement of work. I think the requirements are mentioned in an SOW. What needs to be done in a project, and a BRD is a business required document.
Business requirement document.
Yeah, business requirement document. I forgot the JAD, but it's a joint.
Application development.
Yeah, joint application development, which is decide in which
So who will be the
team decides.
Who will be the participants? So it's nothing but it's a meeting, right? So
Yeah, they take opinion in that with the team leaders and.
Right. So you'll have the customer, then you'll have the architect, and then you have the testers. So you'll do all the decision making in that meeting itself.
Yes.
So rather than go back and forth.
It's a joint decision you can.
Right. So joint application development. So you'll figure out all those requirements from the customer, and then validate it with the architect whether it's feasible or not, and then take their inputs as well and finalize the requirement. Right. So that is that session. Yeah, next one, prototype.
So prototyping is a representation of the final work. Like if the features would not be active in that, but it shows how the final product will look like.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Next one, traceability.
And traceability, it helps to traceability. I think it ensures like we are tracing like each step is going according to the like execution, or like to find out which is like to ensure if it is going correct or not. Like it's more of a tracking and mapping. So in change management, the process goes with filling the change request form and mm, actually I'm not prepared for it today, but I can say with the change, what is like the change needs to be justified, like why the change is required, and also what would be the impact of the change, because it would affect the budget and the whole process. So it's
Explain this. What do you do? I mean, when a change request comes to you, how do you handle it? Tell me that.
so first we ask for filling a change request form, and
What does a change request form consist of?
what is it?
What does it consist of? The change request form. What all details do you capture?
Like what is the change required? What features need to be changed? What features needs to be added, or which needs to be improved?
Okay. After that, what do you do?
After that, there would be analysis to
All right. After that,
like we would need a justification why that change is required.
okay. After that, what do you do?
So the change would impact the budget and the timeline, so we need to find the impact of it, like where would
Okay,
it
you do impact analysis.
affect?
After that, what do you
Yeah.
do?
After that,
Who will decide? Will you decide to take up a change or not?
no,
So who will make that decision?
the BRD, the SME.
So the SME is giving you the requirement, right? The change request.
Yes.
So there would be a change control board which will take that decision.
Yeah.
So this
The
is
advisory. The advisory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So broadly, you have explained the change management. So just, you need some brush up on your, the way you
Yeah,
are.
I mean, I didn't know, like, today also there will be a session, but I was like, I'm quite
So,
aware of it,
see,
but I need to.
Yeah. So just wanted to make sure today that, you have understood all the topics or not, right? So that's the intention.
Yeah.
Mohsin, yeah, please go ahead with your responses. Mohsin, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, please go ahead with your response.
I mean, SOW, change of work. Taking this could be called official statement, the content of the work, then with the client.
Mohsin, your voice is
Then we
breaking up a
have
lot.
details of
Not
the
able to-
result.
I'm not able to hear it properly.
Okay now?
A little better, but I still have that difficulty. I hope can the rest of you
Give me
guys hear it, or just a problem? Yeah. Maybe sitting far off from the Wi-Fi signal.
It's
Think your voice. Yeah. Maybe just check your connection or come over near the Wi-Fi signal.
Is it
That, no.
now?
Okay, go ahead now. I think
As please heard of SOW is this kind of work could be called is taking alignment with the information of the work behind all the detailed work
Most of your voice is breaking.
information.
Can you just fix that? I don't know. I'm not able to follow what you're trying to say. Mustafa, you want to attempt while Mohsin will figure out what's the problem with this system?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Yes, correct.
Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Exactly.
Mohsin, your voice is not clear, so I'm not able to follow what you're trying to say. Can you check on that? Yeah, Mustafa, you go ahead.
Yes, sir. Statement of word you get by your SME. It says that what you have to do. It's like the description of your whole project. And I'm not clear about BRD, but I'll go ahead with JAD. JAD is Joint Application Design. It's a meeting. It's like a focus group where you have all the members of your team, everyone, like your SME, you, your coder, your designer, everyone, and you sit there and decide how to go ahead with your plan. And when it comes to prototyping, it's an example of what your end product will be. There are two kinds of prototyping, which is, first one is throw up, which is made on a paper, which is not useful, and the second one is, can you tell me the name of it, sir?
Evolutionary.
Yeah, evolutionary. So evolutionary is made by the help of your designer, which can be also used for the further development, which will look very similar to your end result. Now when it comes to traceability is a matrix where you have trace on everything, and like you make sure your whole project is covering everything, that you are not missing anything. And there are two types of traceability. One is vertical traceability, in vertical traceability you check on everything, then you move on second thing. And there is also called horizontal tracing. In horizontal tracing, one phase depends on second phase. So you check one phase, then you also check second phase for the changes. And now when it comes to change management comes up when your customer wants some change in his application. Like for example, he wanted just three applications in his software, but later on he wanted 15. So now there is a change. So you sign a document with him, which is called change requirement document, which will state that you are going through this so and so change, and you will take this document to your change control board and authorize their permission to change it.
Okay. To an extent, yeah. I mean, your responses are
Better.
I mean, I can understand that. You have a understanding of the topic, but you need to further refine on the way you would explain that.
Sir, can you tell me BRD?
Right. So BRD is your business requirements document. So basically, you're engaging with the customer and asking all the requirements, right? So finally, where would they be documented? So you have to document it in some place which can be given to the technical team, right? So that document where you define and explain all your detailed requirements is called as a business requirements document. Okay. So all your understanding that you're gaining from the SME, you are representing that using use cases and various other techniques to capture the detailed requirements. Okay. So that is called as a BRD.
So how much could be a BRD? Like how much it could weigh? How many pages?
It could even get into hundreds of pages, depending on the complexity of the application.
All right.
Right?
Okay.
So if it's a small application, it could end up 20, 30 pages. It could large complex application, it could even get into hundreds. Right?
Okay.
So you are capturing details about each and every requirement. So usually you'd have that use case diagram and then the description for capturing the functional requirements. Then there will be a lot of non-functional requirements as well. Okay, so that's how you would proceed.
Thank you.
Before Pooja and Rupali can answer, can I request Tulsi to respond, because last session I think your voice was not working, and Rupali and Pooja tried to answer most of those questions. So I'll at least want Tulsi and Angela to give an attempt before we move ahead.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
SOW is a statement of work. Defines the liabilities, responsibilities, and work agreements between clients and the service providers.
Hmm.
And the format of SOW is scope, location, timelines, the delivery schedule, standards, and mode of contract and payments. SOW is a critical document for project management. The scope of work and the work agreements, all the stakeholders of the project should have a rough understanding of the SOW of the project. That's what I know about SOW. Sir.
Yeah, good. Go ahead with the next one. BRD is a business requirement document. Many business has a process in place to assist with project management and implementation. Sorry,
business
can you say that again? Sorry, I missed it.
many businesses has a process in place to assist with project management and implementation. For improvement involves making reasonable estimates of how big a project is and how much.
Tulsi, rather than trying to figure out a definition for it. So see, why would you create a business requirements document? What does it consist of?
To gain agreement with stakeholders.
Now, what does a BRD consist of?
The business solution for a project, including
it consists of your detailed business requirements, right? So you're explaining the detailed business requirements. Okay? And that's all what you need to say, right? It's a detailed business requirements document.
Including the documentation of customer needs and expectations.
Right. So, your high-level customer needs are explained in detail in your business requirements document. What does it also consist of? It also consists of non-functional requirements, like what? Performance, security, access controls, your availability, a lot of non-functional requirements are all. So basically a document which consists of your detailed functional as well as non-functional requirements is a BRD. Okay, so it's very simple. If you try to give a technically right definition, you will get lost in your thought. So just express your understanding, right? So say that it's a detailed business requirements document. All your business requirements are explained in detail. It also consists of all the non-functional requirements. It's not one single document which has complete details about all the requirements. Okay. Yeah, go ahead with the next one, chat session. So who are the participants in a chat session? Who will participate in, what is a chat session? So is it a document, is it a meeting, or is it a what is it?
It's a developing business system requirement.
So what does JAD stand for?
Joint application.
Joint application development or joint application design. There are multiple names, but so it's nothing but it's a meeting. Okay, and who all will be part of that meeting? There would be a customer, the SME who is giving the requirements. There would be a architect who would tell, who would give his feedback on what is feasible or not, what are all the alternatives available. There would also be a UI expert who would design how the screens might look like, right? And you as a business analyst. So what happens during a JAD such requirement from the, you take the feedback from the rest of the teams, the architect, the UI, and the testing team, and figure out what is the best alternative, and then decide within the meeting. What are the advantages? It's faster. It makes the decision making faster, right? You can capture the requirements much efficiently, right? So that's all what you need to say. Okay. So if you go by the definition, you'll say a lot of unnecessary things. Just you be clear on your thoughts about what is the question, right? What is it that I want to ask, and visualize yourself in a JAT session, right? So if I am in a JAT session, what would I do? Who are all the other people sitting around me, and what would I do, and how would I finally capture the requirement? So that's all what we need to do. Okay. Next question: prototyping.
It is often argued as what business analysts are expected to do on projects. It is effective in eliciting business requirements.
So what does the word prototype means? Try to explain the question, right? So you don't need to give a textbook definition. So what is a prototype? It's a model or a replica of how your final product would look like. So in a prototyping, we are basically creating a model of how my final product would look like. And why do we need this? So that we can validate it with the customer and then say, this is what you are going to get it at the end of the day, at the end of the project. So look at it and then say if you are good with it or not. Okay. So that's basically is what we are doing in a prototype. So you don't need to go for a textbook definition. So out what that you are going to do.
Can you repeat it?
Prototypes can be, of course, again, if you follow, if you want the program.
So it's not clear.
Can be as simple as a simple outline or a sketch. It's an evolutionary prototype. Even to you, if I am a SME, I'll come to you and then I'll tell you that, okay, make this change for me. What should you do? Please go ahead with the responses.
I can't hear. Hello? Hello?
Hello. Tulsi, you want to explain the change management process?
For traceability? Yeah, I can.
Hold on to that. Explain the change management process.
Change management is the proper tools and techniques to manage the people side to change. Change request is a document containing a call or adjustment for adjustment of a system.
Explain the process. So say, you get a change request. How would you handle it? So if a SME comes to you and then says, I want this change to be implemented. So what do? You go and change the BRD?
Almost. No, I can't change.
So then what do you do? All right, I think you need to be more prepared on these topics. Angela, you want to give it a try? Angela and Mohsin, give it a try, and then we'll continue from the next session.
Okay, I was not totally prepared, so I'm sorry for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mohsin, let Angela complete, and then we'll come over
Okay.
to you. Yeah.
Yeah. First, I'll explain SOW. SOW is a statement of work. It's more of a type of agreement between the client and the service provider, where all their needs and it's like more of a type of agreement between the client and the service provider. BRD is a business requirement document, which BA will prepare the document with all the detailed project requirements, including the client's needs and requirements.
Perfect.
And JAD, it's a joint application design. It is a group of members involved in the project. They will discuss all the requirements and how to move forward in a meeting. So to how to move ahead in a project. So the group of people, the group is called Joint Application Design.
Okay.
And prototyping. It's a methodology for creating a document with similar attributes. It's like creating a model of a project to test the final outcome or to test the concept of the project. Traceability matrix. It's more like a tracking document which is in the form of matrix. All the requirements will be detailed in a form of table, and which and we can see how much work is done, and we can track everything in that matrix. And change management system. Change management. It's when the client asks for the change in any of their requirements. Then the client needs to submit the change request form, and the client will submit to BA, and BA will put it in a document and put it in front of the management, and they will decide and approve if it will be feasible or not. And then that's how the change management works.
Okay. I think. You further need to improve on the response.
More details.
But broadly, I think you guys have the basic understanding.
Yeah.
Right? But at least on these questions, make sure that you are very well prepared and now you understand the. Try to explain it. So don't try to mug up the definition. It becomes difficult to answer. Right? So if you understand the process and then you are trying to explain it to the person. It makes a lot more sense when you're going for an interview. Okay, so
Okay.
that should be your approach rather than go by the textbook definition and then figure out exactly what does change management and process would be and all. Right? Mohsin, we'll take it up the responses from you tomorrow because your voice is really not clear and rather than waste time.
Yeah, I'm on phone. If you want me to respond, I can respond now.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Quickly.
Yeah, the first one, SOW is the statement of work. It could be briefly called as the official confirmation from the project from clients to the working team. It has the details of the project and a duration of the project, which could how much time would it take to complete the project, and then comes the business requirement document. It is another official document which describes every requirement which would take place in the project. It shades the sequence of the requirements along the timeline of the project, which shows whatever the requirement or whatever the steps is necessary for the completion of the project. And
Okay.
then we have JAD, right? Is that JAD?
Yeah, JAD. Right.
JAD is joint application design, which could be called. It's a method which combines the client and the working team with their collaborative effort. They keep focus on the requirements of the project, which would help them, which would help the team, which would help the programming team to stick with the requirements of the project. And this method of collaborating client and working team helps to avoid the time lapses and meet the requirements and expectations of the client. And then comes prototyping. Prototype is simply a replica of the actual model. So, for suppose if we are designing a web page, we can just represent that using a software or a simple design that this is how our final project would look like, and which could include some of the changes, which is not exactly the final product, but the overview of the project, which will help us to explain the client that this is what the final project would look like.
Okay.
And
Traceability.
then comes the traceability. Traceability is what simply tracking of the. Hello.
Yeah, I think broadly your responses are good. This problem with the voice. Give me a minute. I'll let you get that out. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think broadly we are good. Most of your responses are okay. We need further refinement.
Okay.
Make sure that you understand the topic and then be ready with it. Okay. So we'll meet again next time.
Okay.
Next session tomorrow, and then continue from there. All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.